When the residents of Willow Creek first heard that a new HOA president had been elected, most of them didn't think much of it. After all, the community had always been relatively peaceful. People kept their lawns neat, their houses well painted, and their driveways clear. The HOA existed more as a formality than an actual authority. But that all changed when a man named Charles Whitman became president. Charles was a retired corporate executive who had moved into Willow Creek with the air of someone used to being in control. From the moment he took office, he began treating the HOA as if it were his personal empire. At first, residents assumed he would only make minor adjustments, maybe a reminder here, a suggestion there. Instead, what they got was a full-blown dictator who was determined to enforce every single rule in the book, and even invent new ones as he pleased. Within weeks, Charles had circulated letters reminding homeowners about approved lawn heights. He cited fines for unsightly garbage cans left visible for more than 12 hours. He even reprimanded families for over-decorating during holidays. Each rule was delivered in a crisp, condescending letter that made it clear Charles thought of himself as the sole guardian of Willow Creek's prestige. But what made matters worse was Charles's obsession with being seen as a model of perfection. He often walked the neighborhood with a clipboard in hand, scribbling notes about any minor infraction he noticed. To him, every chipped mailbox, every slightly cracked sidewalk, and every basketball hoop left in a driveway was a threat to the image of the community. At first, most residents tried to comply. They trimmed their lawns a little shorter, made sure their trash bins were tucked away behind fences, and toned down their Christmas lights. But no matter how much effort they put in, Charles always found something new to complain about. To him, no one was ever good enough. It didn't take long before resentment began to spread. Whispered conversations over backyard fences and hushed complaints at the community park began circulating. People were tired of being treated like children, but they also knew Charles was clever. He quoted the HOA bylaws with ease, twisting every vague rule to his advantage. He had a knack for making people feel like they had no choice but to comply. That was until one resident, a man named Daniel, noticed something peculiar. While Charles was busy policing everyone else, his own property seemed to go unchecked. Daniel often walked past Charles's home on his evening strolls, and he couldn't help but notice little things that would have gotten anyone else fined. Charles's lawn wasn't quite as pristine as he demanded of others. His garden shed, tucked in the back corner of his yard, hadn't been painted in years, and his driveway, though always spotless of vehicles, had a small oil stain that had never been cleaned. Daniel kept these observations to himself at first, unsure whether they were just coincidences. But as Charles's rules became harsher and his punishments more aggressive, Daniel began keeping a mental list. And the more he watched, the more he realized that the so-called perfect president was guilty of breaking many of the very rules he enforced. The turning point came one summer afternoon when Charles issued a community-wide letter banning basketball hoops from driveways, claiming they were hazards and eyesores. This hit close to home for Daniel, whose teenage son loved to shoot hoops in the driveway after school. The boy was devastated when Daniel had to take the hoop down to avoid the hefty fine Charles had threatened. That night, Daniel walked past Charles's house again, and there it was, plain as day. A portable basketball hoop sat just at the edge of his driveway, the rim slightly bent from use. Charles's grandchildren had been playing on it earlier that afternoon. In that moment, Daniel realized the truth. Charles wasn't enforcing the rules for the sake of the community. He was enforcing them to control everyone else while exempting himself. He lived under one set of standards and demanded another for his neighbors. From then on, Daniel decided he would no longer sit quietly. If Charles wanted to play dictator, then Daniel would start watching him just as closely as Charles had been watching the rest of the neighborhood. The hypocrisy was too blatant and the unfairness too great. Over the next few weeks, Daniel began gathering evidence. He discreetly took photos of Charles's property whenever he saw a violation. He documented the peeling paint on the shed, the visible garbage bins, the oil-stained driveway, and of course, the basketball hoop. Each snapshot was carefully saved and dated. The more evidence Daniel collected, the angrier he became. It wasn't just about his son's basketball hoop anymore. It was about the principle. The residents of Willow Creek had been living under a constant shadow of fear, afraid to plant the wrong flowers, hang the wrong decorations, or leave their bins out too long. Meanwhile, Charles broke his own rules with impunity. Word began to spread quietly among the neighbors. A few of them noticed Daniel's careful note-taking and asked what he was up to. At first, he brushed it off, but eventually he confided in a few trusted friends, showing them the evidence he had gathered. Their reaction was immediate. They were outraged, but also hopeful. Finally, someone was standing up to Charles. The neighbors began pooling their own observations. Some had seen Charles's dog running off-leash, something strictly forbidden in the HOA rules. Others had noticed he sometimes parked his car on the street overnight, another violation. Piece by piece, a damning picture was forming. And yet Daniel knew he couldn't act rashly. Charles was cunning, and if confronted too soon, he would likely find a way to wriggle out of the accusations or retaliate. If Daniel was going to bring him down, he needed a plan, a thorough, calculated strategy that would expose Charles for the hypocrite he truly was. The first step had been gathering evidence. The next step would be finding the perfect way to reveal it, because if Daniel was going to challenge Charles, he wanted to do it in a way that no one could ignore. As summer turned into fall, the tension in Willow Creek only grew. Charles's rules became stricter, his letters more aggressive, and the residents more restless. But beneath the surface, a quiet rebellion was forming, and at the center of it all was Daniel, carefully waiting for the right moment to strike. When that moment finally arrived,